How's everyone doing today? Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about all the different types we can graph and show different types of information. We're going to be talking about stem and leaf plots, dot plots, box plots, histograms, stuff like that. You may have already seen this before, but we're going to do a quick lesson on that today. Before we start, I want you to take a look at this warm-up. This is just different numbers of students, that the number of states that they have been to, right? So it's kind of all over the place. What I want you to do for this warm-up is I want you to find the mean, median, mode, min, max, range, Q1, and Q3 now. I haven't really shown you how to do all of those yet, but I'll go through it real quickly right now. If you would like to try this on your own, go for it. At this point, you can pause it and do it. If not, just go ahead and keep watching the video. So here we go. So the first thing we need to do, remember, is we need to enter all of this information into our graphing calculator. And in order to do that, if you remember, we're going to hit the Stat button. And then we're going to go to Edit. And that will allow you to put in all these values into your list. So go ahead and do that right now. If you need to pause the video, you can. I already have them entered into my list ahead of time. But just let me make sure. Yep, there they are. Once you have all those into your list, you need to go back to Stat. And then you need to go to Calc by hitting the right button. And then you need to go to one variable stats and hit calculate. That will give you almost all of this information all at once. So once you've done that, I'm going to do that right now, you should have some answers that go like this. Your mean, remember, that's your X bar. If you round it, I got about 11.4. My median, I got 6.5, and it's important to notice, if you haven't done this in a while, make sure you scroll down to show all the different pieces of information. You can't see all of them right away. You need to scroll down. My min, what that basically is my smallest number. My min is just 2. My max is the largest number. It looks like the largest number here is 31. My Q1, which is my quartile 1, we'll get into what that means in a little bit, but my quartile 1 should be at 3. My quartile 3 is at 19. I think that's it for your calculator. Now, we still have to figure out range and mode. We already know what mode is, right? We talked about mode. Mode is the number that occurs the most. So it looks like 2 would be my mode because it occurs 3 times. Oops, sorry, not 3, that's a 2. And then my range. My range is essentially the maximum number minus the minimum number. And since I already know what those numbers are, my max is 31, my min is 2, that would be 31 minus 2, which equals 29. You will have to do this on your assessment, so make sure you know how to do everything on this slide. All right, so now we're going to move on here to our first graph, or whatever you want to call it. And our first one is called a stem and leaf plot. Now, I just want to kind of describe how you read all this and all this before I actually get into how to create one. But this is a stem leaf that I pulled off the internet. Essentially, what the stems are is these are your tens place. Right? If I think of a number, say 345, remember this right here is your hundreds. This number right here is your tens. This number right here is your ones place. Okay, so what the stem and leaf plot does is all my tens right here, like so say the 4 will be listed least to greatest here, and all my leaves are the ones places are going to be listed least to greatest going this way. If there's repeats, you need to actually have those in there as well. So for example, if I were to read this number right here, this would be 63. For this would be like 25, 25, 27, 27, 28, and you get the idea. So we're actually going to make our own right now, just to show you how this kind of works. So here's some of that information we saw at the beginning of our video. So I'm going to go ahead and go stem, leaves, and I'm going to write 0, 1, 2, and 3. And the reason I'm writing those numbers is because these are all the tens places that exist, right? For here, my tens place is a 1. But here, notice right here, there isn't really a tens place. So we're just going to assume that it is a 0 in front, so 0, 4. So that this number will end up going in this row. And this would be like 0, 6. That would go in this row as well. But like 31 has a tens place of 3, so 31 would go down here. So basically, I'm just going to organize these and list them. So I'm going to start with all my stems that have a 0. So basically the numbers 1 through 9. So I want to list them least to greatest, so it looks like 2 is my smallest amount. So since there's 3 of them, I do need to write all 3. I'm going to cross those out as I go. The next largest number looks like it's a 3, and then a 4, and then a 5, and a 6, and a 7 right here. So that would be my first row done. If you would like to fill out the rest of the stem and leaf plot on your own, go for it. Just pause the video because I'm going to write it down anyway. If you just want to keep watching, that's fine too. So we're going to move on. So now we're going to look at all my numbers with a 1 in the tens place. So like 19, 15, and 13, I'm going to list those. 13 is the lowest, so that goes first. Then it'd be 15, and then it'd be 19. Remember, we read these 13, 15, 19. Those all look like they're done with now. We'll move on to the 20s. So I see a 22 and a 29 is it. So that's how we write that. Cross those off, and 31 would be last. So there you go. That's a basic stem and leaf plot. Not too bad. We're going to move on now to another type of graph. Okay. Some people call these X plots as well. It just depends whether you want to use an X or a dot. Either way, these aren't too bad. This is just an example of one that's already been done. It's looking at the number of pets that people have. So, looks like based on this graph, it looks like 2 people have 0 pets. It looks like 3 people have 1 pet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people have 2 pets. That's where I would fall in because I got Zeus and Chewy, my 2 dogs. Okay, 3 people have 3 pets, 2 people have 4 pets, so on and so forth. So we're going to make our own dot plot here in a second, just to show you kind of how to do this. So these are just some numbers that I came up with randomly, but they probably aren't too far off of what actually happens, considering you guys watch Netflix like crazy. I don't know how you guys have the time to do that, but you do. I suppose the whole stay-at-home thing is going to allow you guys to watch a lot more videos. So whatever. But here we go. Here are all of the different number of hours that students watch Netflix. So I'm going to create a number line, and I'm going to label it with all these numbers that exist, right? So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's the highest it goes. So we'll start with there. And now for each student, I'm just going to make a dot above one of the numbers. So for the first one, My first student watches 4 hours of Netflix a day. Bam. Second student watches 5. There we go. 3 and 3, 2, 1, another 5, 4, 3, 2 more 2s, and another 5. So this would be an example of a dot plot for number of hours students watch on Netflix per day. Not too bad, right? Pretty straightforward. So we're going to move on now to the next type of graph that we're going to be covering. Those first two are actually pretty easy so far. These are going to be a little bit more challenging. These are called histograms. Here's an example of a histogram, but essentially a histogram, it's like a bar chart, but instead of categories down here, we have ranges of numbers, okay? And notice also on a histogram, these bars actually touch each other. In a bar graph, there's a little bit of space in between. So when you're making a histogram, it's important to figure out how you want to scale your x-axis. So if you look here, it looks from 40 to 60, it looks like every bar is about 10 units, right? From 40 to 50 is 10, 50 to 60 is 10, okay? And you can do that however you want. I think the easiest way is if you're trying to make a histogram from a stem and leaf plot that you've already created, I would just go by tens because you already have your information separated that way. Okay, but you can do it however you want. And then basically you're going to count how many times does a data point fall into that range of values. Okay. Kind of confusing right now, but I'm sure it'll all make sense in a second. So we're going to make our own histogram here. These are the same numbers I used before. So if you remember, before I had this stem and leaf plot, and I had it 0, 1, 2, 3, blah, 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 right? And I listed all that stuff. So I'm going to do kind of this, I'm going to make my histogram kind of line up with this. So let me just show you what I mean. I'm just going to draw this out. So when I do this, I need to create my x-axis. I need to have ranges of numbers. So I'm going to call the first one 0 to 9. And it is extremely important that if you say label this as 0 to 9, that every other range of numbers needs to be the exact same amount. So if I go 0 to 9 here, then this should be 10 to 19, and this should be 20 to 29, and this is 30 to 39, and we can stop there because we don't have anything past that anyway. But notice, these are all the same amount of numbers, 0 to 9, 10 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39. It's not like I'm doing 0 to 9 and then 10 to 50. That wouldn't make any sense. All right, so that's probably the hardest part, in my opinion, is setting up these numbers so that they're exactly the same. Now on the y-axis here, that's the frequency, or that's how many times these numbers fall into these categories. Or sorry, not categories, but these number ranges. So we're just going to go frequency up here. And I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't imagine there being more than 6 numbers in any one number range. So here we go. I'm just going to kind of go through this. I'm going to count through here, and I'm going to see how many of these numbers are between 0 and 9. So let's count that together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I believe. So yeah, maybe it did go a little higher. So it looks like 8 of those numbers. Let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of those numbers fall between 0 and 9. So I'm going to draw a little bar here. Perfect. Now I'm going to go ahead and count the numbers that are between 10 and 19. So that's 1, 2, 3. I'm getting 3. So I'm going to go up to 3 here. I'm going to make a little bar. Perfect. 20 to 29. I think there's just 2. 22 and 29. And then there's one number in the 30s, 31, so I'll go right here. You don't have to shade these if you want to. I like to, so I like to shade them kind of like that maybe, and then maybe some squigglies here, and then maybe some straight lines. And I don't know, maybe this way. Doesn't matter. Okay, so that's an example of making a histogram. Remember, these need to be the same amount. This is the number of times that it happens. Your bars should be touching. Great. So far, so good. You guys are doing awesome. Let's go Vikings. Woo! Sorry about that. All right. Box plots. So if you remember earlier in the earlier videos, plus the video I talked about today, we got into this whole quartile 1, quartile 3, all that kind of stuff. And you're probably thinking to yourself, I don't know what the heck that means, but let me explain it. In order to make a box plot, you need 5 pieces of information. You need the min, which we found in our calculator. You need Q1, which we found in our calculator. Our median, which we found in our calculator. Our Q3, which we found in our calculator. And you guessed it, the maximum, which we found in our calculator. So your calculator does all the hard work. So what we're going to do here is we are going to find all those, and then we are going to plot them. And I will show you what that looks like. I actually have all that information from before. Let me see here. Okay. We're going to make one real quick. So if you remember from the warm-up, our minimum was 2. Our maximum was 31. Our Q1 was 3. Our median was 6.5. And our Q3 was 19. If you are not sure where I'm getting these numbers from, these numbers are from the very beginning of the video from our warm-up. We've been kind of using a lot of the same information throughout this PowerPoint. So what you need to do is you need to basically plot these. So I'm going to plot my minimum first. I don't know, I'm going to throw it right over here. I'm going to call this 2, and we draw a little dot. Okay? The next thing we need to plot, so this is our minimum. The next thing we need to plot is our Q1. And in this case, our Q1 is right here at 3. I'm going to draw a line right here. Okay, so this is your minimum. This is your Q1. The next thing we need to plot is our median. Median, 6.5. I'm going to draw a line. That is our median. Q3 is next, which is 19, which is way over here. This doesn't have to be drawn to scale, by the way. 19. My Q3. And then lastly, I need to plot my max. Way over here, 31 max. I'm going to draw another dot. And then basically from here, I'm just going to connect these. And this is a pretty darn good looking box plot. All right, remember minimum, Q1, median, Q3, max. Where can you all find those? In your calculator. One last thing I want to talk about with box plots and why we pick all these numbers, or why Q1, Q3, what does that all mean? Well, essentially, if you think of a median, that is going to split your information so that 50% of your information is to the right, and 50% is to the left. Well, all a Q1 or a quartile 1 is it's the median of the lower half of all your information. So it's like the median of a median. And so what that's going to do is that's going to split these individual parts into 25% each. Very important to know those because that will show up on your assessments, I promise you that. Okay, so basically Q1 is the median of the lower half of the data. Q3 is the median of the upper half of the data. And so what that does is it splits each chunk into 25%. That, I think, is everything you need to know about all the different displays and box plots and stuff like that. You will see that on your assessments and in future courses. The last thing we really want to talk about is how to read a box plot. So if I were to say, what percent of my data falls between, say, 1.8, let's just call this right up here, let's call this 1.8. What percentage of my data falls between 1.8 and 1.7? Well, you tell me, well, about 50%, right? Because this is 25% and this is 25%. Okay, so be able to answer questions like that. Good luck with the assignment, everyone. If you have questions, ask your teachers. Wash your hands. Have a good rest of your day.